I heard it breathing. The sound was wet, heavy, like someone whose lungs were filling with fluid, yet the rhythm remained disturbingly steady. It wasn't an animal. Bears snort. Deer huff. Cougars growl. But this was trying to breathe quietly, and failing to suppress the rasp. Between me and that thing there was only the thin nylon skin of the tent. I lay on my back, gripping my hunting knife so tightly that my fingers had gone numb. I could see the silhouette. The moon that night was almost full, and its light cast a shadow across the sloping wall of the tent. It looked like a person who had lowered onto all fours and pressed their face against the fabric, directly opposite mine. It didn't move. It just listened. Then, after what felt like an eternity, I heard a voice. Quiet. Calm. Completely stripped of emotion. "You're not asleep, are you, Mike? Come outside." The blood in my veins turned to ice. Because the voice belonged to me. It was my own voice, recorded and played back with perfect precision, only without any intonation. I closed my eyes and prayed that the fabric would hold. These are 3 true scary stories from the Appalachian Trail. I never believed in stories about forests having memory, or that there are places in the mountains where humans simply shouldn't go. I grew up in West Virginia. To me, the Appalachians were just a backyard, a place for hiking and fishing. But what happened last fall made me sell all my gear and move to the city. It was a solo hike along a section of the trail near the Great Smoky Mountains. I planned to cover about 40 miles in 3 days. A standard route. Nothing difficult for an experienced backpacker. October is the best time, fewer tourists, no mosquitoes, the air sharp and clear. The first day went perfectly. I covered more ground than planned and set up camp in a small clearing slightly off the main trail. I always try to stay away from official campsites. I don't like noisy groups. The strange things began on the second day, around noon. I was walking along a ridge, enjoying the view, when I noticed something bright in a patch of rhododendron about 10 meters off the trail. I climbed down to take a look. It was a backpack. An old, faded blue backpack, half buried in leaves. It looked like it had been lying there for years. Curiosity won. I nudged it with my boot. Heavy. I unzipped it. Everything inside was damp and covered in mold, but I could still make out the contents: canned food swollen with age, a folded map, an old model flashlight. And a camera. A disposable point-and-shoot, the kind they sold in the early 2000s. I didn't touch it. The feeling was wrong. Like I was robbing a grave. I zipped the backpack back up and returned to the trail. But about an hour later, I noticed something that made me slow down. On a tree to my left was a trail marker, a white rectangle indicating the path. But beneath it, barely visible, someone had carved an arrow with a knife, pointing into the dense forest, away from the trail. And above it, scratched into the bark: "Don't follow them." I told myself it was just teenagers messing around. But a knot of unease settled somewhere deep in my stomach. The forest around me grew denser. The trees stood closer together, blocking out the sun. It became unnaturally quiet. Normally, a forest always has background noise: birds, wind moving through the canopy, the creak of branches. Here, there was only a padded silence. Thick. Suffocating. Around 4 in the afternoon, I realized I was walking in circles. I recognized a fallen tree shaped like the letter Y. I had passed it an hour earlier. That was impossible. I had followed the markers exactly. I pulled out my GPS. The screen flickered, no satellites found. The compass behaved strangely. The needle drifted lazily, never settling on north. Okay. Stay calm. I decided to backtrack to the last junction. I turned around and began walking in the opposite direction. 20 minutes later, I saw something blue ahead in the bushes. The same backpack. But now it was positioned differently. When I first found it, it had been zipped closed and lying straps up. Now it was open. Its contents spilled across the ground. Rusted cans. Rotting clothes. The camera was gone. Someone had been here while I was walking in circles. I scanned the forest. It stood like a wall. No sound. No movement. Only the sensation of a heavy gaze pressing into my back. You know that feeling, when you are absolutely certain someone is watching you? The skin at the base of your skull starts to itch. I quickened my pace, nearly breaking into a run. I needed to reach the official shelter before sunset. According to the map, it was 3 miles away. 30 minutes later, I heard whistling. It wasn't a bird. Someone was whistling a tune. Simple. Repetitive. 3 notes. The sound moved parallel to me, somewhere downslope to my left. I stopped. The whistling stopped too. "Hey!" I shouted. "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a second later, the whistling resumed. Closer. I walked faster. It kept pace. Whoever, or whatever, was down there moved through deadfall and underbrush where walking quietly was impossible. Yet I heard no footsteps. Only that damn whistling. The sun began to sink. Shadows stretched, turning trees into black skeletons. Finally, I saw a clearing ahead, a wooden structure. A shelter. I ran into the clearing, hoping to see other hikers. It was empty. Just an old wooden platform and a fire pit filled with ash. I quickly built a fire. The light of the flames steadied my nerves slightly. I decided not to pitch my tent. I would sleep directly in the shelter, back against the wall, so I could control the perimeter. Night fell fast. Around 10, just as I was slipping into an uneasy sleep, I heard footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Gravel crunching along the trail. Someone was approaching the camp without a flashlight. I sat up, grabbing my flashlight and knife. "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped right at the edge of the firelight. I aimed the beam into the darkness. No one. But immediately, to my left, from absolute blackness, a voice spoke. "Help me find the camera." The voice was dry. Raspy. Like 2 stones grinding together. I snapped the flashlight to the left. Empty. "I don't have your camera," I shouted, hearing my own voice tremble. "You saw it," the voice replied, now from my right. "You opened the backpack." That was impossible. A human couldn't move that fast. Not without making a sound. I threw more wood into the fire, turning it into a blazing torch. I sat with my back to the wall, turning my head constantly, trying to catch movement. All night, they walked around. I say they because the footsteps came from different directions. Sometimes something came very close to the edge of the light, and I could hear heavy breathing. Sometimes they whistled that same 3-note melody. But the worst happened just before dawn. The fire had nearly burned out. I sat staring at the embers, fighting sleep. And then I noticed something on one of the beams under the shelter roof, directly above my head. I slowly raised the flashlight. There, in the corner beneath the roof, curled into an unnatural knot like a massive spider, was a person. Completely naked. Skin gray, caked in dirt and scratches. Its limbs looked too long. It stared down at me without blinking. Its head was turned 180 degrees, chin pressed toward its back. In its hand was the disposable camera. I screamed. Not from fear. From pure animal terror. I bolted from the shelter, leaving my backpack, leaving everything, and ran into the forest. I ran without direction, skin tearing against branches, falling and scrambling back up. I didn't hear pursuit. Only my own ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. 4 hours later, I stumbled onto a highway. A truck driver picked me up. He said I looked like I had seen a ghost. I didn't tell him the truth. I said I ran into a bear. But when I got home and began emptying the pockets of the jacket I had somehow kept on, I found something hard in the side pocket. The disposable camera. I hadn't taken it. I hadn't touched it the second time. The thing under the roof had slipped it into my pocket while I slept. Or while I sat by the fire, unaware that it was directly above me. I developed the film. Most of the photos were ordinary landscapes, taken years ago. But the last 3 frames were new. The first, my back as I walked along the trail. Shot from the bushes. The second, me sleeping by the fire in the shelter. Shot from above, from the beam. The third, a close-up of my sleeping face. Eyes closed. And a dirty gray hand with long nails reaching toward my face, almost touching my cheek. I don't go into the mountains anymore. After that incident, I thought I would never again find myself anywhere near a forest. But life has a strange sense of humor. A year later, I lost my job. Debts were piling up. The only position that came quickly was as a caretaker on private property in the northern Appalachians. It wasn't exactly a park, more like massive hunting grounds owned by some corporation. My task was simple: live in a cabin on the edge of the property, make sure there were no poachers, and inspect the fencing. The pay was good. No people for miles. I told myself it was the perfect way to steady my nerves. The cabin was solid, log-built, with a powerful generator and satellite internet. The first 2 weeks passed quietly. I patrolled the perimeter on an ATV, repaired small breaks in the fence. The forest here was different. Older. Darker. Massive spruce trees swallowed the light before it ever reached the ground. The strange things began with the radio. I had a service transceiver for communication with the base in town. Every evening at 2000 hours, I had to check in with a report. That evening, Wednesday, I switched it on as usual. Base, this is post 4. All quiet. Over. Through the static came the dispatcher's voice. Sarah. Copy, post 4. Good night. I reached to switch the radio off when I heard a click. The channel opened again. Post 4, this is base. Why did you step outside? Over. I froze. I was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea. Base, I'm inside. What are you talking about? We received a signal from your motion sensor on the porch. Anne. Mike, are you crying? Your mic is live. I can hear crying. I looked at the push-to-talk button in my hand. It wasn't pressed. Sarah, I'm not pressing the button. And I'm not crying. Mike, stop it. It's not funny. The sound is coming from your frequency. It sounds like a child. A chill slid down my spine. Sarah, I'm signing off. It's interference. I turned the radio off. Silence settled over the house. Only the refrigerator humming. Wind outside. I walked to the window facing the porch and turned on the floodlight. The beam illuminated the wooden boards. The railing. The old rocking chair. No one. I convinced myself it was a technical glitch. Crossed frequencies. It happens. The next night, I woke to knocking. Knock. 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 Measured. Polite. Not at the door. At the window. My bedroom was on the second floor. I lay there staring at the curtained window, trying to invent a rational explanation. A branch? No wind. A bird? Birds don't knock in 3-second intervals. Knock. 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 I got up carefully to avoid creaking the floorboards. Took my heavy mag-light flashlight. Walked slowly to the window. The knocking stopped the moment I approached. I yanked the curtain aside and shone the light through the glass. Nothing. Only darkness. And my own pale reflection. Then I looked closer. On the outside of the glass was a smear. A greasy imprint shaped like a forehead and nose. As if someone had pressed their face against the window, peering in. Second floor. No ladder. The wall beneath was sheer, covered in smooth siding. I didn't sleep until morning. The next day, I inspected the outside of the house. No ladder marks. But on the siding below the window were scratches. Deep vertical gouges. The spacing between them was too wide for a human. And too wide for a bear. I called Sarah. Sarah, I've got something. Some kind of animal. Big. Send a ranger. Ranger won't be there until Monday, Mike. It's Friday. Lock yourself in and don't go out at night. By the way, we checked the communication logs. That crying signal? It didn't come from your radio. Then where from? Triangulation placed it in the forest. 200 meters north of your cabin. There's an old coal mine there. Abandoned. I knew the place. The entrance had been sealed 50 years ago. That night, I barricaded the doors. Closed the first floor shutters. Sat in the center of the living room with the lights on and the shotgun across my knees. Around midnight, it began. First, the roof. Soft. Slapping footsteps. Like someone walking barefoot across shingles. It moved in slow circles, studying the chimney. Then the sound shifted to the wall. I heard claws, or whatever they were, scraping down the siding. It stopped at the front door. I raised the shotgun, aiming at the center of the wood. The doorknob turned slowly. The lock clicked against the deadbolt. The handle turned back. Then a voice. Mike. Open up. I'm cold. It was Sarah's voice. Exactly like over the radio. Same tone. Same inflection. Sarah? I said before I could stop myself. Yes, Mike. My car broke down. Let me in. I almost lowered the gun. Almost walked to the door. But something stopped me. Sarah, what's your dog's name? I asked. We had talked about her retriever on my first day. Silence outside. 10 seconds. Then the voice changed. Flat. Mechanical. Dog. 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 The word repeated. Faster. Blending into a vibrating monotone that made the windowpanes tremble. This wasn't a person. This was something learning to speak by intercepting radio waves. Then it hit the door. The impact bent the wood inward. Plaster rained from the ceiling. Another blow. The hinges screamed. I fired through the door. Buckshot tore through the wood. From outside came a shriek, high-pitched, metallic, like steel dragged across glass, only 1,000 times louder. Then silence. I stayed there until dawn. When sunlight finally filled the clearing, I opened the door. On the porch was a puddle of black, viscous liquid that smelled like ammonia and rotten earth. The door was carved with deep gouges. I packed my things in 5 minutes. I didn't wait for my paycheck. I didn't even return to base. I mailed the keys. Later, I learned that section of forest had long been restricted due to ground instability. The locals say something different. They say the miners in the 1930s dug a tunnel into somewhere they shouldn't have. And sometimes what lives deep below comes up. To listen to our voices. And learn how to imitate them. Have you ever wondered why survival guides always say, if you get lost, stay where you are? It makes sense. A stationary target is easier for rescuers to find. But there's another reason they don't print in the brochures. If you start moving in panic, you can wander into places where the rules of our world function differently. The third story happened after I stopped working alone. I joined a volunteer search and rescue team. SAR. I thought being in a group would make it safer. A crowd. Dogs. Radios. GPS. We were called out to look for an 8-year-old boy who had gone missing from a hiking trail near the state line. His parents turned away for a minute to take a photo. When they looked back, he was gone. No scream. No sound. Just gone. We spread out in a line, sweeping the forest grid by grid. The terrain was rough, ravines, thick undergrowth, rock outcroppings. By noon, the weather turned. Fog rolled in. Dense. So thick I could barely see the partner walking 10 meters to my right. "Hey, Steve!" I shouted. "Keep your distance." "Got it," he called back. We moved another 20 minutes. The forest grew stranger. The trees here were enormous. Ancient. Moss-covered. The sounds faded. Even the wind died. Then I saw something bright on the ground. A child's sneaker. It stood neatly on a rock. Not tossed. Not half buried in mud. Placed. The laces tucked carefully inside. "Steve." I found a shoe. I called into my radio. Static. "Steve? Base? Anyone?" Nothing. I looked to the right where Steve should have been. No one in the fog. "Steve." Then I heard a reply. "I'm here. Come over." Steve's voice sounded wrong. Muffled. Like he was speaking into a bucket. And the direction was wrong. The voice wasn't coming from the right. It was coming from above. From the canopy of a massive oak. I looked up. The fog swallowed the branches. "Steve, what are you doing up there? Did you climb the tree?" "I see the boy." "Climb up." Something wasn't right. Steve was a heavy-set man in his 50s with bad knees. He couldn't climb a massive oak without gear. Not silently. Not that fast. I took a step back. "Steve, say our code number." Silence above. Then leaves rustled. A heavy, shifting sound. Like something enormous moving from branch to branch. "Code number," the voice repeated. Now with a questioning tone. "Code number?" I understood. That wasn't Steve. I began backing away, careful not to turn my back on the tree. "Help!" the voice screamed suddenly. Now it was the missing boy. "Mom! Mom!" The cry was heartbreaking. Any normal person would have run toward it. Instinct demanded I climb the tree. But I noticed something. The scream repeated. Every 4 seconds. Identical pitch. Same break in the voice on the word "mom." A recording. A loop. The creature was using bait. I turned and ran. I ran south by compass, aiming for the river. The fog seemed to thicken around me, trying to disorient. Above, in the canopy, something moved parallel to me. Branches cracked under tremendous weight. It never came down. It hunted from above. Suddenly I burst into a small clearing and nearly collided with a tent. An old canvas tent. It had clearly been there a long time. The entrance was open. I dove inside, zipped it shut, and froze. I knew it was stupid. Thin fabric wouldn't save me. But the instinct to hide was stronger than reason. Outside, everything went quiet. I lay there trying to slow my breathing. 1 minute. 2. 5. Then I heard it. Leaves crunching right outside the entrance. And that sound. Wet. Labored breathing. I saw the shadow on the fabric. It was enormous. Far larger than a man. It lowered itself to its knees in front of the tent. I gripped my knife. "You're not asleep, are you, Mike? Come out." It was my voice. The same moment I described at the beginning. I didn't answer. I closed my eyes and began reciting a prayer I hadn't remembered since childhood. Something sharp dragged across the nylon. Zzzzzzzt. The sound of tearing. But the fabric didn't split. It was a nail. Or a claw. "Mike," said Steve's voice. "Mike," said the boy's voice. "Mike," said my mother's voice. She had been dead 10 years. It was cycling through files. Searching for the key that would make me open the zipper. I don't know how long it lasted. An hour. An eternity. Then, in the distance, I heard it. A helicopter. Real. Mechanical rotor blades. The creature froze. Then I heard a sharp leap. A heavy impact on the ground. Branches cracking as it retreated uphill with impossible speed. I stayed inside the tent another hour. Until I heard voices. Real voices. Rescuers talking on radios. Complaining about mud. I crawled out. They found Steve 2 days later. Alive. In shock. He said he lost sight of me in the fog and got turned around. He swore he heard my voice calling him deeper into the woods. He didn't follow because his knee started hurting. His bad knee saved his life. They never found the boy. Only that sneaker. But there's one detail that keeps me awake. When they escorted me back to the vehicles, I saw Steve staring at me in horror. "Mike," he whispered. "Your radio, you had it with you, right?" "Yes," I said, patting my pocket. "The radio wasn't there. I must have lost it when I ran." "Someone was transmitting on your frequency," Steve said. "All night. He was using your voice. He said he found the boy. He gave coordinates." "What coordinates?" I asked. "The cave on the north slope. If the team had followed those coordinates in the dark, I'm afraid to imagine what they would have found. I don't do search and rescue anymore. I live in the city now. No trees. At night I hear sirens and traffic instead of leaves. But sometimes, when my apartment becomes too quiet, I think I hear wet, rasping breathing just beyond the door. And I ask myself, am I sure I ever left that forest? Or am I still lying inside that tent, losing my mind, while whatever was outside is simply waiting for me to finally open my eyes? If you ever find yourself in the woods and hear someone calling you in the voice of someone you love, don't answer. And never, ever follow the sound.